NES is one of the best-selling consoles of all time. Well, behind, a lot of things. But it still remains in the top 15 to this very day, which is very impressive for a console that came out in 1985 during a burning building of a market that was video games. Quick history lesson. The Atari 2600 was released in 1977 and was a smash hit, especially with games like Pac-Man and Breakout. But in 1983, the infamous video game crash of 1983 happened because of the constant stream of low-quality games coming out, with the main one being E.T. Video games were something that no one wanted to touch with a 100-foot pole, but then a Japanese toy company turned video game company released the Family Computer, or Famicom, in Japan in 1983, and actually brought it to the West in 85, marketing as a toy more than a video game console, because of the inclusion of the Robotic Operating Buddy, or ROB for short. It was a smash hit with kids everywhere, to the point where even news stations were recovering how big it was. The NES had some amazing ports of Nintendo's arcade hits like Donkey Kong and Mario Bros, and some amazing originals like Excitebike, Duck Hunt, and a little known game, may have heard of it, Super Mario Brothers. And the games just kept evolving until we got amazing games like Super Mario Bros. 3, Mega Man 2, and Kirby's Adventure. Even though the NES had some amazing games, it's overrated, in my opinion at least. While the NES had some fantastic games, it had a lot, and I mean a lot, of shovelware, and overall terrible games just coming out. The Angry Video Game Nerd alone has made 140 videos about NES games. And of course you have infamous companies like LGN, who are infamous for making some of the worst games on the console. Cheetah 2 / Action 52 is one of the worst games of all time, and it was on the NES. Even franchises that got their start on the NES were some of the worst games in their franchise. My best example is my favorite franchise, The Legend of Zelda. Zelda was an extremely revolutionary game of all time because of the battery save feature. But is it really that good or fun to play now? I would say no. It has so many quirks about the game that it makes it way too difficult and confusing to play now. The only real way to play it is with a guide, and in my opinion, it kind of makes the game fail. If you need an outside source to enjoy the game, it doesn't really work. It really relies on being a kid in the 80s with a whole summer to beat the game. And everyone knows Zelda 2, the second worst rated Zelda game behind Triforce Heroes. It's not even a Zelda game, really. It's more of a JRPG. And it's way too difficult to the point of being unenjoyable. Another pretty bad Nintendo made game was from their main man Mario. Super Mario Bros. 2 is the worst main series Mario game, in my opinion. No, why are you guys saying... No, wrong Mario 2. You get that off the screen. No, not Super Mario Bros. 2 USA. SMB 2 Japan, also known here as The Lost Level. The game has the same problem with Zelda 2, that it's way too hard and not fun to play at all. It was made for people who mastered the original game, and it truly shows. Jumps are strange, invisible blocks are placed like they are in Super Mario Maker, and it even has traps that players wouldn't see the first time coming, and screws them over. Thankfully, Nintendo of America knew that this game was way too hard for us in North America, who was just getting back into video games, and instead we got our Super Mario Bros. 2, a reskin of Doki Doki Panic. Japan got our Super Mario Bros. 2, known as Super Mario USA, and we got their Super Mario Bros. 2 in 1993 with the release of Super Mario All-Stars, and later the original NES version with the Wii Virtual Console, and then later on the 3DS and the Wii U and the Switch. While the main Nintendo games were pretty good compared to what was out at the time, a lot were just bland games that could have been made by any other company. Donkey Kong Math, Hockey, and Soccer. Yay. Compare it to the games that Nintendo makes now. When a new one is announced, it's a big monumental event, and not usually just soccer. The console itself is not very good. It's very prone to hardware failure. Right next to the white Xbox 360, the NES has a high perish rate. The blinking red light of death is just as synonymous with hardware failures as much as the red ring of death. Because of the NES's flat surface, people would put drinks on it, so when they spilt, they would get all over the console, ruining it, ruining the insides, everything. Nintendo's solution for broken NESs from hardware failures was basically just to buy the NES top loader, like what Microsoft did with the 360. Except the slim Xbox 360 came out when the 7th gen consoles were still alive and kicking. The NES top loader came out in 93. The SNES came out in 99. The 4th gen was over 3 years in, and no one cared about the NES at that point. The NES does have some great games though. Don't think I'm blindly hating these games because they're on the NES. But sometimes people need to take their rose-tinted glasses off and realize that their console from their childhood isn't as good as they remember. Anyways, I gotta go back to playing Mario Sunshine on the GameCube, which is part of the best gaming era. That gives me a video idea. Whatever. Well, see you all next time. Bye-bye.